Welcome back to the Jon Krawczynski Show. Last show we had, Jon was live at Head Flyer Brewing with Chris Finch and Bones Highland. Thanks again to Chris Finch, Bones Highland with Timberwolves organization for making that happen, Jon for making that happen, Head Flyer for making it happen. That's a really cool thing for everyone involved, including our network. This is TalkNorth.com. The Jon Krawczynski Show is one of our many great shows at TalkNorth.com. Looking forward to another big year here. We're coming from the Aquarius Home Services studio.
Scott for Aquarius Home Services, wishing you a warm and cozy Happy New Year. Not so cozy? Still relying on that furnace that's, well, not so reliable? Here's the fix for 2026. Enjoy no payments and no interest for 6 months on a new high-efficiency whole home heating and cooling system. Enjoy today and don't pay until this summer. Schedule your free estimate today at AquariusHomeservices.com. Financing based on credit approval. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended.
And we're presented to you by Lexus of Wayzata and Maplewood. We'll tell you more about our sponsors later on. All right, Jon. Jon, of course, from The Athletic and TalkNorth.com. Let's just go big picture here. It's been a while since we talked. We've seen a couple of horrible losses. We've also seen some pretty good basketball, including the last 2 games.
Yeah, it's funny, Jim. I was kind of thinking about this before we came on to start recording as I kind of looked back on that 4-game road trip that they were just on. And then you fold in the Brooklyn Nets home game with the ugly loss that they had to them, kind of in the middle of these games that we haven't really talked about on the podcast yet. And I'm starting to wonder if this team is sort of the living embodiment of Rudy Gobert, in that when they look bad, they look awful. And they looked terrible against the Nets. They looked awful in Atlanta. You had Anthony Edwards leaving the bench early. You just like nobody could make a shot. You had really porous defensive effort. But then you juxtapose that against, Chicago, Miami, and Washington, all really good, solid, professional performances that make you think more about the potential of this team, even if the opponents weren't, top flight. I still think like the way that they went about really just decimating Chicago and Washington, and then beating a Miami team that had been red hot, and beaten the Pistons and the Nuggets recently, and really had been playing well. Like, I just think that it's sort of hard to get a grip on exactly what this team is. And I think the team is still trying to figure that part of it out as well. But, when they look bad and when they are playing poorly, you think this is disgusting. But then they put it all together and they look like one of the better teams in the Western Conference. It's just quite a Jekyll and Hyde situation with this group.
I definitely wanted to get to Ant leaving the bench. I think that's a very interesting topic. But, I talk to outstate radio stations. I have a lot of Timberwolves fans in my friend group. I get, emails, texts, as you do all the time. And I have trouble completely commiserating with the Timberwolves fan who gets angry at every bad loss.
Right.
Because if you focus on the Timberwolves, you're going to be upset when they lose to a bad team. Mm-hmm. If you look at it more globally and you look where they are in the Western Conference, they're basically in a virtual tie with everybody else who's good, a step below Oklahoma City, but everybody else is kind of competing for the second, third seed. All these teams lose games they shouldn't lose. I think that's just a function of an 82-game season.
And especially right now, Jim, in this like late December, early January portion of the season, before the trading deadline, before the All-Star break, the season's been going on for several months now. You can kind of see teams getting into a bit of a malaise. Now, let's just look at it right now in the Western Conference standings. The Timberwolves are 6-4 in their last 10. And you look at that and you say, yeah, that's all right, but you'd like it to see better. But let's look around them. Oklahoma City, 6-4. Spurs, 7-3. Lakers, 5-5. Nuggets, 4-6. Rockets, 5-5. Suns, 7-3. Warriors, 6-4. Trailblazers, 6-4. Everyone's 6-4, 5-5, with a couple of 7-3s in there. That's what all of these teams are sort of going through right now. They'll drop games they shouldn't drop. They'll win games they shouldn't win. And that is sort of the rhythm of the season. And I do think that one of Chris Finch's biggest strengths as a head coach is that he does not really give in to the whims of the season the way that the fan does. I mean, after the Atlanta game, everyone wants everyone fired. And look, I understand that because it was a really ugly game. Like, terrible. It was awful. And so it does make you question what, the ceiling of this team is, or how, where they're going and all of those things. But, Finch, to his credit, basically just said, yep, this was a bad game. We need to play better. We need to have more energy. But just a few games ago, we had 110 of 13, and so we're just going to keep on going and keep on going. And now you look back at that road trip, and they're 3-1 with 3, really impressive performances and 1 really bad one. And so if that can be the pattern, that's fine. But I do think like Timberwolves fans are the same as, like, let's say Warriors fans or Bucks fans or whoever, where you are watching your team and your team only every single game. And you're thinking, gosh, the Rockets don't do this. The Nuggets don't do this. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. You just don't see it. And so it doesn't mean that there isn't cause for concern or real deep analysis. Like, we can get into all of it, of course, because all of it is important. But the successful teams will not allow a couple of bad games to pull them into a tailspin, just like they won't allow like 3 good games to make them think they're winning the title. Like that, one of the biggest challenges of an 82 game season is managing the highs and lows and keeping everything even keeled. And I think Chris Finch does a really good job of that.
You can also hear Jon Krawczynski on the Viking Update Show. We do this show and that show on YouTube as well as via audio. You can subscribe to your favorite podcast app. You can also find the shows at talknorth.com. Thanks to everyone who watches and listens. So we're talking here on Monday morning. On Sunday, you and I were both at the Viking-Packer game. And after the game, there's always a little milling around outside the locker room while we wait to get let into the locker room. And, I heard 2-3 different NFL writers going, oh my God, the Timberwolves. I mean, they lost that game, in Atlanta. It was terrible. They lost Brooklyn, and they're kind of getting, I'm thinking, true. But if NFL teams who play 17 games a year aren't at their best in all 17, how can you expect anybody to be at their best for 82 stinking games? When you set an 82 game schedule, what you're saying is we want all the TV money, even though we're going to degrade the product.
Yes. 100%. And right now, as it stands, we're recording this on Monday morning. The Wolves are a 1/2 game back of the 3rd seed in the West. They're 4 games up of the 8th seed. And so, they're 10 games over 500. They are in such a better position than they were at this time last year. And last year turned out to be really, really good season and a very successful playoff run. I don't want to be a guy who says, don't worry about anything that you've seen, because I do think like there are real concerns about point guard, about bench scoring, about defense without Rudy Gobert, a lot of these, kind of Jaden McDaniels up and down involvement in the offense, Chris Finch looking for the right rotations. Like, there are real meaningful things to get into and to dissect and to kind of examine as this season goes along. But I do think that the NFL has sort of poisoned the fans' ability to process the NBA season the way it needs to be processed, is that you do not put everything into one game like you do with the Vikings. You just can't. Like, if you do it that way, you're absolutely going to go insane watching these things. And so the ability of the leadership of the team, of the players on the team, to not get too hung up on things that are not working and to just keep on maintaining a level head and working through the issues that they have is just the key to this whole thing. And the Wolves have done that well the last couple of years. and they're going to need to do it well again here going forward. That's why, if we want to transition a little bit, Jim, to the Anthony Edwards Atlanta situation, what did make that a little bit troubling. Is like, okay, we have seen so many times before where Anthony Edwards, after a bad game, will be like, "Hey, we just didn't make shots, and we'll make them next time, and we'll figure it out." This one did seem to be a more overt expression of frustration with his teammates, with everything that was going on. And it did cause you to be a little bit concerned about exactly where his head was at, where the team's head was at. Lo and behold, they played really well in Miami. They played really well in Washington, and they've been able to pull out of that. But though that moment was certainly not a good look for him or the organization.
No, it wasn't. I'm not going to excuse it. It also followed on against what he said after the Brooklyn game, which is, I guess, is Timberwolves basketball, which, it's kind of an uncharacteristic statement from him too. That was fascinating. And I think back to Randy Moss walking off the field in Washington, end of the 2004 season. Mike Tice sends Matt Burke into the locker room to confront Moss. They end up winning that. They end up backing into the playoffs, losing that game, but backing into the playoffs. Mike Tice did the beep, beep, beep. Actually, an NFL coach actually yelled beep, 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 and backed up during a press conference to mimic backing into the playoffs. Oh my God. So many Tice moments.
I miss him, man.
So many Tice moments. Good Lord. And then they go win in Green Bay with Randy Moss basically winning the game by himself. And then they, of course, eventually lose. But this was not as big a game. It's not the NFL where, it's everything gets magnified. It was troubling, but it just didn't seem to, I guess it just didn't seem to cause much of a stir. Or did I miss the stir?
No, you didn't miss the stir. And I wonder exactly why it didn't. Because there were cameras that saw it. Now, take, for instance, Draymond Green did the same thing in Golden State this season, and that became a 5-alarm fire. Now, part of that is because there is a little bit more media attention on the Warriors than there is on the Timberwolves. Part of that is because Steve Kerr and Draymond Green really do sort of engage publicly and explain themselves and talk through it. Chris Finch was asked about it after the game and before the game in Miami, and basically gave like a very short answer, like, yep, it's been addressed. It can't happen. We're moving on. Yep. And kind of nipped it in the bud. Anthony Edwards did not speak after the Atlanta game, but then after Miami just really did kind of brush it off and say, that was nothing. And it's easy to do kind of 3 days after the fact, and especially after you played a really good game, to kind of just wipe it away. But in that moment, it was a difficult situation to watch unfold. I was not at the game. I was watching from home, but, the thing that stuck out to me is that for the entirety of his career, Anthony Edwards has been one of the very best teammates you could have, in terms of he has always deflected praise to his teammates. He has always accepted accountability to try and absorb any blame that teammates might get for certain things and in certain difficult times. And so it felt in that moment like he was pointing a finger. And that's not something that he has done ever really in his career. And so I do think it was just probably a real moment of frustration, because he shot the ball really well, but they're playing in his hometown. He's probably got a bunch of family and friends there. And really, it was, I think, the worst performance from the team all season long. They just did not give effort defensively. They couldn't shoot outside of Ant and Randall. And it just was a really ugly game. And so the motions got the better of him. But, real faces of the franchise, real star players, as Ant clearly is, should not be leaving the bench, with 7 minutes to go in the game and like going to the back and kind of abandoning the team, and that he needs to sit there and soak it in and be with the guys. And I'm sure that there were discussions about that after the game and in the days after leading into that Miami game. And so he went to a place that he should not have gone to, in terms of that expression. And by also not talking after the game about it, it forced Rudy Gobert and Dante DiVincenzo and others to try to speak for him, which is unfair as well. And so, I, by and large, I would say almost universally in his first 5.5 years, I've just been so impressed with his leadership and the way that he conducts himself with his teammates, the way that he is always kind of an empowerer and a guy who, just really does things the right way from a messaging standpoint and all that. That was a real slip up on his part. And, I hopefully he learns from that and understands that there was probably a line that he crossed that he can't cross. And everyone kind of improves going forward. And certainly the last 2 games have been a nice response to that ugliness as well.
Listen, Anthony needs to understand the way the Timberwolves deal with difficulties and adversities is not to walk off the court. It's to get punched by Rudy Gobert.
That's right. That's right. Yes. If he could punch someone or get punched himself, yes, we're in a much better shape.
Punch a wall. That's fine too.
Yeah. All of that. Yes. Yes. Just go into the typical Minnesota sports, fashion of handling adversity, and you'll fit in just fine, and no one will say a word about it.
One more note on Anthony. Let's talk a little bit about Rudy Gobert. First of all, let's hear more about Lexus, Wayzata, and Maplewood.
If you are in the market for a new luxury vehicle, look no further than our good friend Charlie Swanson at Lexus. Whether you're on the west or the east side of the Twin Cities, they've got you covered with 2 great locations, Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. Check out the all-new Lexus TX, a spacious SUV with 3 rows of seating and plenty of room for all your gear. Head over to lexusofwayzata.com or lexusofmaplewood.com for details and to find your next ride today.
Bumped into Steve Terry from TSR Injury Law recently. Just a great guy. It's been so much fun to be affiliated with him, to work with him, to get him on the show occasionally. And just a reminder, he was there with his family. They were taking a trip. Just great to catch up with him. Just a reminder that this isn't some national firm that's trying to pretend they're a Minnesota company. This is a Minnesota company that started very small, succeeded, in part because they treat people well, in part because they're really good at their job. I don't know what more you want from a company. So if you're ever hurt, call 612-TSR-TIME. They'll take good care of you. 612-TSR-TIME. I wonder if the presence of Anthony Edwards' grandfather, who's at the game and hasn't seen him play live much, I wonder if he was embarrassed by his team's performance in front of his grandfather. I mean, it's not a good excuse, but it could be a partial explanation.
I mean, it's certainly like whether it was like him specifically or just like what you know about Anthony Edwards is he's very proud to be from Atlanta. Like he is wearing the Braves hat all the time. Like he really does represent that area of the country and takes pride in kind of coming up from a very difficult upbringing to get to where he is, but he hasn't left Atlanta behind. And so I do think that when he goes back there, and there have been several games in Atlanta, it does seem like where either he doesn't play well or the team doesn't play well. And so I do think there is a little added frustration with that. It's like he wants to put on a show for the people who he is close with, who only get to see him live once a year. Like the Wolves being in the West and the Hawks being in the East, they only play in Atlanta once a year. And so I do think that he wants to put on a really good show and show like his people, not only his individual talent, but what he's helped build the Timberwolves into. And so when they lay an egg, to use Dante DiVincenzo's words, the way that they did in that game, that's hurts your pride. Like he's, even though there's not one single person in that arena that came to see Anthony Edwards that, are friends or family of his that would ever be disappointed in him that way. It's still like after the game, you have to look your family in the eye and say, man, we were just terrible. And instead you want to celebrate, you want to just have smiles and just enjoy it. And so, I do think that one of the reasons that he escalated his frustrations the way that he did was because it did come in Atlanta. Yeah. With his grandpa, with many, many other people in the stands there watching him. It was disappointment on his part that was what they offered everyone who kind of had come to that game to see him in person.
All right, on to Rudy. He's playing really well.
Really well. Yes. I mean, Chris Finch said after the game in Washington on Sunday that he thinks that Rudy is playing the best that he has played since he arrived in Minnesota. And I would agree with that because he is doing it more so on both ends of the floor. His defensive metrics right now are completely off the charts. He's not going to win Defensive Player of the Year because of all of the stigma, I guess, and narrative around him, unfortunately. But he has absolutely been one of the very, very best defensive players in the league this year. He's been dominant. I mean, what we saw in Washington, I mean, he had 2 blocked 3-point shots, like in addition to what he was doing at the rim. I mean, it's incredible the range that he is, putting on display and his ability to cover all over the floor. But then what we also saw in the game against the Wizards was offensively more of a kind of skill package than we've ever seen. I mean, he at one point had, I think it was Alex Sarr at the top of the key, did a rip through move, 2 dribbles to the basket and dunked on him. And you're like, that you would never even think to even fathom Rudy Gobert could pull off a move like that. And he did it. And then he had one where he caught the ball in the pocket, behind the back bounce pass to a wide open DiVincenzo in the corner for 3. Dante missed it, but like that's the kind of skill set that he is showing more and more this season. And yes, it came against the Wizards, but I think that's really valuable against some of the really bad teams. Is like the way Chris Finch put it is that he just won't allow us to lose these games. And so he brings a certain just level of performance and intensity against the bad teams, especially, that just have really helped the Wolves in an incredible amount. And he's catching the ball a little bit better. No one is saying that he's, Anthony Davis as an offensive player or somebody like that, but he has shown significant and noticeable improvement on that end of the floor, in addition to him being as good as he's ever been in Minnesota defensively, which that's, I mean, night in, night out, he's one of the most consistent players. Again, he will have a bad game here and there. He will miss layups and free throws. He will turn the ball over. He will have, a quiet game, but more and more this season, we are seeing Rudy Gobert utilized on offense and actually doing some damage there, which is a really good development for the Wolves.
I think some of our conversations in past off seasons, we've said, hey, if he would just catch the ball and dunk the ball with force when he's anytime he's near the bucket, that we'd take that, just that. And he's actually doing a lot more than that.
He is doing a lot more than that, but to your point, you're right, Jim, in that the dunks that he is throwing down, are more authoritative. Like he plays, Chris Finch has said that he has a stronger base that he's operating with. And so he has more balance. And so he is, I mean, the number of plays where it's been leaping up into the air and throwing it down with authority, they've been so much more frequent this season than most other seasons that we've seen since he's been there. And I do think that those plays specifically are important for Rudy because he is laughed at. He is belittled for his, quote unquote, lack of skill on offense. But if you are more Shaq-like in terms of powering through guys and putting them on posters, that immediately gains your teammates' respect and attention. And so I think that one of the most maddening parts about Rudy Gobert's game, kind of previous to this year, and even in some parts of this year, is he will catch the ball right near the rim and just try and lay it up softly. Yeah. And when those ones miss, which happens often, it looks so bad and it looks so soft that it really does hurt him in the eyes of his teammates and the eyes of his opponents that he plays in terms of a respect factor. But when he grabs it with two hands, goes up and throws it down, and then flexes afterward, that display does get guys going, and it does make them believe in him a little bit more. You are seeing some of the passes that Dante and Jaden and a few others are giving him these days, and that is showing a growing faith in him to be able to make those plays. I think that Ant and Julius are still working on that part of it, but a lot of the other guys are giving him more difficult to handle passes, and he is largely catching those and going to work with them. And so that has been just really important for Rudy, and also important for the Timberwolves, because it can't be 4-on-5 out there. It just can't be. And if he can have that confidence to play like that, it just really does open up another level for this team to get to offensively, that, is just really important for them to be able to reach.
When you talk about his base being better, do we know how that happened?
He did. So one of the big things that we've discussed a little bit, but I think it deserves revisiting, is he did not play international basketball this summer. And so instead of the kind of wear and tear on his legs, on his back, on his body of playing basketball for several months, he was able to really just concentrate on strength training, on getting stronger, on resting, and making sure that he was kind of fully healthy coming into the season. And, before games, and this is not new, we've seen this the last several years, but before games, he is always doing a couple of exercises where he has like a little kind of inflatable plastic pillow that he stands on with one leg, and he uses to balance. He'll kind of, you'll use a tennis ball to stand on and like kind of really just kind of get his balance and equilibrium going. And I wrote a story about this work with like kind of like this neuroscientist that he had, a couple of years ago, Nandes, and they did a lot of work together for focus and concentration, hand-eye coordination, those types of things. And last year, they were not working together. And I do think that he took a step back. Then this year, Nandes has returned, and we are seeing tangible evidence that the work that they do together is also helping that. But I think by and large and overall, he is stronger in his core and in his legs than he has been the last couple of years coming in, because I think he's been a little worn out from the international play, the Olympics, the World Championships and things like that. And so it just, everything about him looks more stable than it was. And I think that that's been a huge benefit for him.
Interesting. All right, let's get into some other topics. Do we have a Twitter question today at the end of the show?
We do have a Twitter question, yes.
So let's take care of our batch of sponsors here. We'll get to our Twitter questions, some more topics on the Timberwolves and the NBA. Let's start by thanking True Vision Institute.
True Vision Institute in Bloomington. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, you see that I do not have glasses. I have not had glasses for a year and a half now. And it was, right after the playoffs in 2024 where I went into True Vision and I had my consultation, went through and got LASIK surgery. And it has been one of the best things I've ever done for myself. And a year and a half later, I've seen perfectly clearly. Everything is working incredibly well. My life is so much easier without having to deal with the hassles of contacts and eyeglasses. I don't have the added expense of every year or two getting new glasses, getting new prescriptions, like always re-upping my daily wear contacts. I don't have those hassles to go through. I haven't had to go to the eye doctor in that year and a half because I'm seeing just great. So It's so much more convenient. Life is so much easier, and it's all thanks to the great people at Chew Vision. Dr. Chew does an amazing job with the surgery. You are in and out in minutes, literally. And then you have a little bit of recovery time, and you're seeing 100% clearly. And they are so welcoming. They are so warm at Chew Vision that they'll make you feel at home and make you feel at ease with a situation that can sometimes be a little bit nerve-wracking, but they make it so easy to deal with and go through. So go to chewvision.com, CHU vision.com, and set up your consultation. Go in, check it out. Tell them the Jon Krawczynski Show sent you, and just get on with living your life the way that I have. You will be kicking yourself that you didn't do it 10 years earlier. chewvision.com.
And what's up with sglambchops.com these days?
Yes, the Lamb Chops clothing, SG, lambchops.com is the place to go for all of the best casual wear that you can find. Hoodies, sweatshirts, t-shirts, hats, everything that you want is at Lamb Chops. You use the promo code JONK20. They will get you 20% off of your order at Lamb Chops. I was wearing a Lamb Chops sweater at the Wolves game just before their road trip. Got so many compliments on it. It is so comfortable, but it's also stylish enough to wear to work without having to worry about it. You can also wear their stuff out in the North Loop on a Friday night and feel right at home. You can also just wear it lounging around, watching games on your couch at home as well. It's so versatile. It's so high quality. Lamb Chops, sglambchops.com, and use the promo code JONK20 for 20% off your order at Lamb Chops.
I live in the North Loop, and if you're going to wear sglambchops.com stuff, please wear it before 8 o'clock so I can see it before I go to bed. And also,
well done.
One more thanks to Head Flyer for putting on such a great show. Anything new at Head Flyer right now?
So one thing to mention again, one of the great things about the show at Head Flyer was we raised a lot of money and brought in a lot of food for Second Harvest Heartland. With that event, I think they said there were 400 people in the place. Wow. And it was an amazing turnout. And most people brought food to donate or items, kind of toilet paper and things for people in need to donate. It was an incredible event. But if you missed that event and you go to a Timberwolves game, or go to Head Flyer in Northeast Minneapolis for a Timberwolves game, during Timberwolves games, the Crunch Time beer that I collaborate with Head Flyer, the proceeds, a portion of the proceeds from each beer sale during Wolves games goes to Second Harvest Heartland. So goes to food insecurity, goes to helping people in need. So not only do you get to go to an unbelievable tap room, have great beer, watch the Wolves games with your friends and just have a great environment, but you also get to have a portion of whatever you pay for the Crunch Time going to a great cause. So stop into Head Flyer Brewing. Again, tell them that we sent you, but also just have yourself a crunch time and then help people in need while you're doing it.
Yep. Thanks to Second Harvest Heartland. Thanks to Head Flyer. Thanks to everyone who showed up and contributed. We really do appreciate it. What are they going to do about this bench?
Yeah, that's the big question, Jim. You look at what they expected coming into the season after letting Nickeil Alexander-Walker go to Atlanta, and he is playing great in Atlanta. He's starting every game. He's averaging over 20 points a game. Really feel happy for Nickeil to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. But the belief is that, hey, with Terrence Shannon Jr., with Rob Dillingham, with Jalen Clark, they have enough pieces to kind of patch together a reasonable facsimile of what Nickeil Alexander-Walker gave them. And they just have not been able to do that so far. Terrence Shannon Jr. has been hurt. And so I do think that has affected his performance. But even when he's been on the court, just been really bad defensively. Rob Dillingham is out of the rotation right now because he has just not been shown that he's ready for consistent minutes. And so now what it has come down to is basically you have Naz Reid and then you hope you get some good Bones Highland scoring, and that's about it. And so I do believe that as the trade deadline approaches, we've talked a lot about the need for a point guard. And you can argue that that's still there, but I actually think, Jim, that the biggest need right now is a bench scorer. Someone who can come in, maybe guard a little bit as well, and give them some pop off of the bench at the wing position, because they just have not been able to rely on Shannon to do it, and there's no one else. Mike Conley is older, and so he will have a good game here and there, but he is not a scorer. He's not that kind of a player, and so everyone says, well, move Dante DiVincenzo to the bench. And I just don't think that's the answer. I just think that you look for another guy. Someone like Malik Monk would be awesome. I don't think it's going to be Malik Monk, but somebody like that who can come in, handle the ball just a little bit, but also just score in bunches for you, so that when Anthony Edwards goes to the bench, or when Rudy goes to the bench and you become a team that struggles defensively, at least you can make it up offensively with those rotations and those units. And so it's been really the biggest, I think, reason for concern with what this team can do is they've gone from a team that played like 8 guys last year a lot to one that can really reasonably rely on like 6.5. And so they either need a new body, or they need Terrence Shannon Jr. to come back healthy and play well, or Jalen Clark to give him a little bit more offense to go with his great defense, and Bones Highland to be consistent. And that's just they just need a lot to go right there, and to start giving them a little bit more balance and depth.
Is there any way they could have worked it so they could have kept Nickeil, or is just the price prohibitive given their current salary structure?
Yeah, it really, I mean, they could have said goodbye to Naz Reid. And
that's not the answer, yeah.
And I just don't think that was the answer for multiple reasons. Number one, of course, like, he's just a folk hero here and he's super popular, but he is also a real weapon. I mean, he has been a little up and down this year, but you are seeing very much 6th man of the year capabilities from him. Like, I think he had 33 against Chicago, 29 against Washington. Like, he really does play, or 29 against Miami. And like, he really does give them a different dimension. And so it was essentially like, they had to pick 2 of Naz, Julius, and Nickeil. And, the way that Randall played in the playoffs, you couldn't say goodbye to him.
Yep.
And I just think that there was a belief that it would be easier for them to replace Nickeil with who they had already on the roster, versus if you let Naz go, is Leonard Miller going to be the guy? Do you bring back Garza? Like, and there would just be a big drop off in terms of production. And there has been a big drop off with Nickeil leaving and the other guys trying to replace him. But that was not this has been all unexpected. I didn't think it was just wishful thinking on their part that, Terrence Shannon Jr., Jalen Clark, Mike Conley, and Rob Dillingham could somewhat combine to give them enough of what they were getting from Nickeil Alexander-Walker on the court, not in the locker room, but on the court. And it just has been really, really disappointing that way. And they've underperformed so far this year. So yeah, hindsight, you'd look and say, man, it would really be great to still have Nickeil here. And I talked to Nickeil ahead of that Atlanta game, and he did say to me, Jim, he's like, look, I understood where everything was, and I know why it worked out that way. But he did say, which was interesting, he's like, in my heart, I was a little bit bitter because I just thought maybe there was a way that they would see how important I was and just figure it out and make it happen. And I knew it was unlikely, but I was still holding out a little bit of hope for that. And in the end, it was just going to be too difficult to do business wise. And it has not looked great with their decision, but all of the logic behind it was sound and strong. And so it's hard to really blame them for the path that they chose that way.
Right. Where are you in terms of hope that Dillingham could still be a player in this league? I'm in the minority, Jim, where I do believe that in the right situation, he can still be a rotation player. He can still be a guy
who maybe like comes off the bench and does give you good offensive minutes. I love the way that he's played defensively in terms of just like the effort that he's put into it. That is not his strength. And yet he has really embraced that and tried his damnedest to not be a complete liability there. And so that the effort that he is giving on that end shows me that he wants to be a helpful player, but it's just hard to envision that happening here with this team trying to contend in the Western Conference, and with Chris Finch really not trusting him. I think in order for him to eventually become a reliable player, he would have to play a whole season where he's getting at least 18 minutes a night, where he's really allowed to find a rhythm, and probably where he has the license to just look for his own shot more than what he does here. I think they've really tried to make him more of a playmaker. And I think that I understand why they do that, but I also think it's sapped some of his aggressiveness and certainly has taken a lot of confidence away from him from a scoring and shooting standpoint, which was kind of his calling card when he was coming out of Kentucky. Is like, man, this guy is electric when he comes off the bench and just gives you microwave scoring. Like that's his big thing. And so it pains me to say it, but it seems like he needs to go to a place that isn't in contention right now, that will allow him to play big minutes night in and night out, to learn through mistakes. And then eventually I think he can become a player that is helpful in this league. But right now in Minnesota, it's hard to see how that comes to fruition.
Let's wrap up this show with our Twitter questions from sglambchops.com. Once again, thanks to everyone who listens. You can find the show on YouTube. You can find the show at talknorth.com or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks to all of our sponsors. Thanks to everyone who shows up at the live shows. Thanks to all of our listeners. We really appreciate it. We're looking forward to another big year here. And a reminder, other shows we have at talknorth.com. We've done Mitchell's interview show. Abby Murphy, the great Gopher hockey player, was a recent guest. Leah B. Olson also contributes to that show. We have Mark Rosen Sports Monday. I think Lavelle's his guest this week. I was his guest last week, but he also gets really big guests as well. We have John on basketball, Michael Russo and Anthony LaPanta on hockey, Kevin Gorg on hockey, Kevin Gorg and Randy Shaver on fantasy sports, and Lavelle Neal and Roy Smalley on baseball with me on the Chin Music Show. I can't even remember all the good shows we have. So check out talknorth.com. You'll find something you like, as well as outdoor content.
Yep. And so here's from Frank Templetop. And we touched on this a little bit, but can you compare the bench last year with this year through the same amount of games? Any stark contrast analytically that stand out? And I won't get into the analytics as much, but I will compare to last year a little bit more, Frank, in terms of one of the dynamics that has changed, significantly, obviously, is that they have moved Dante DiVincenzo from the bench into the starting lineup. Mike Conley is now on the bench. And so last year, the team, the three guys, the main guys that you were bringing off the bench were Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Dante DiVincenzo. Those are three guys all capable of big offensive nights. Nickeil was definitely more of a defensive presence than an offensive one when he was with the Timberwolves, but we saw him make plenty of big shots in big situations. You felt confident when the ball got to him, in the corner, and at the end of the clock, if he's rising up, take it, you think, yeah, that's going in. And he was a good offensive player. He's turned into a really good offensive player in Atlanta. But when you take Dante DiVincenzo out of the bench rotation and put him into the starting lineup, and then you bring Mike Conley back into the bench now, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker's in Atlanta, now that what you're looking at from a bench kind of cohort is you have Naz Reid, great offense player. Then you have Mike Conley, a connector, but not a scorer at all. Then you have Jalen Clark, a great defensive player. Offensive position is shooting is down from where it was last year. Free throws terrible right now. So he's definitely more one-dimensional. I think you can get more out of Hutter and things, but it's taken a while to get there. And then you have Terrence Shannon, who be kind of this offensive firepower, and it just hasn't materialized. And Rob Dillingham isn't in the rotation. And so now, like, the look of the bench group is much less a collective scoring unit. It's much more of one that has to be more defensive minded, that has to kind of grind out possessions in a different way. And so a lot of people have said to me, well, just take Dante DiVincenzo out of the starting lineup, get a point guard, and put Dante, in the second group, and there's your bench scorer. I mean, it's true, but I really like the way that the starting five fits together. I like what Dante brings to that group as a hustle guy, as a defensive kind of presence, and then as a guy who can shoot. He's shooting really terribly right now, but he's a good shooter overall that will come out of the slump that he's in. So the feel of that second unit is just so much different this year without the offensive engines that they had. And so when they go to that second unit, there's just a lot more limitations from a shot making standpoint that just change the complexion of the team by a significant margin, unless we see Nas going crazy or we see Bones knocking down a bunch of shots. Like it's just much more dependent on 1.5 guys than it was last season. And so that's why we have seen some nights where they really struggle to keep up with the opponent's bench scoring.
Yeah. Last year, they basically had 8 starting caliber players, and this year they have 6 starting caliber players. That's a drop off.
That's right. Yep. It's a big drop off, and it's fine if you only have 6 starting caliber, even if 7, 8, 9, and 10 are at least really reliable bench guys, and they haven't been that so far. So it's not a deep team right now, and it would be nice to kind of get some of those guys going so they are deeper.
No question. Good stuff from Jon as always. Thank you all for listening and watching. Check out Jon on the Viking Update Show as well. Check out talknorth.com for all of our other shows. We will talk to you next week.